coming back.
And where is Carol? Carol? Benny.
She went to the restroom.
Okay. When they were presenting this morning, it was all I could do not to just say, and so we could, there were so many ideas, so many provocative ideas being tossed out, and so many, well, ways of being. And I wanted to, make that word for me, please. I wanted to, and I always do, I always, without even meaning to, challenge the notion of what is real or at the center and or what is marginal. So I will just say it point blank because very few people can say it. And usually, often if I just stand up, somebody's getting an attitude. How come? Because I know how to stand up. Because I ain't asking nobody's opinion to stand up and be who I am. And I've always been like that. I don't have any internalized racism or sexism. And I grew up in a magical community, which was all African American, where it seemed to me we all took it for granted that we were all eccentric. And that it was there you go. And that it was all right to be like that at all times. As I told a student of mine somewhere, I said, when I grew up in this community, there was no crime. I'm talking about the black folk. I don't know what white folks doing. They weren't important. But I'm serious. We took each other seriously, you know. We were major news down at Miss Sally's Cafe, which is what I wrote the book about. But we took it for granted that most people in the world had their own autonomy without using that word. But that's what we thought the world was about. So thank you, Crystal. Because of Crystal, I get to go back home and take you with me for a minute, which is Northeast Georgia. And the whole concept of being in exile. I read a poem, I wrote a poem, it's somewhere in Blood Root, I think, Professor Chris. The whole notion of ownership. I told some of the people where I live that they might have paid for a piece of that land. But I own it because I love that land. And it loves me. And wherever I am, it seems, in Appalachia, the mountains are calling me. I almost ran off the road 4 or 5 times. Coming up. Look at that mountain. That was literally happening. I have had a passion for this place called Appalachia all my life, although we're only in the foothills. And although we were so poor, I didn't get into a car to ride around until I was maybe 20, and I ain't even lying, because most of us didn't have a car. But we liked walking around the hills. So I'm going to read from Sequestry Poems, and then 65, and then performance pieces, hopefully in 30 minutes, and then we can have a discussion and or question and answer. Let me say before I start, participation is invited. That means laughter, applause, groaning, moaning, whatever you move to do. And I wanted Bianca to, is she in there?
She has another reading. She's like,
she's in.
Yeah.
I just wanted to recognize and honor what she was saying again. So those of you who know her, tell her again that I feel like I grew up in a realm and on the cusp of natural supernaturalism. Because the people in my community literally saw ghosts. They weren't making that up. We simply weren't. And if they told the story enough, or if they told you enough, you think you saw them too. So we didn't know sometimes what the difference was. And we really grew up like that, reinforcing, I guess it was group delusion, I don't know. But some of it I know for a fact was true. So there was this magical alternate reality. And my title for this was, Once You Cross Over Here from There, and I borrowed that from the introduction to Gloria Neller's Mama Day, out of respect for her and admiration for Mama Day. If you haven't read Mama Day, that's the book to read. That is the book. Once you cross over here from there, in terms of Sequoia Street, then everything changed. The rest of it is connect these bones, these dry bones. You know that song? We'll come to that in a minute. And what I've tried to do with Sequoia Street poems, and I don't know if this will work today because I'm just like Bianca. I've heard so much wonderfulness and the music and the voices until I think my program is slightly altered, but I will begin with the music, and I will see if it can work. And if it cannot, well, I'll stop and just keep going anyway. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When it does work, Sakuyi. In the beginning, before the beginning, words had no meaning. There was no beginning. You just were and are. The original Nomo is a toy to you. Sakuyi of the Cherokee peoples became worded Sakui, then Sakui. And then after that, Appalachian foothills, Sakui. In a language, Appalachian foothills, in a language that had no meaning except when arbitrarily assigned. But there is still this meaning. Do not mess with the sacred. It will get you. These mountains will get you. The sacred up in here will get you every time. That is the introduction to Sequoia Street poems. And this is another introduction. Now I know, Laverne, you remember so-and-so. They say that, and they mean somebody who rode through town 10 years ago, or before you lived, and maybe you could be dead, or they could be dead. They expect you to remember to know, just like your mind is their mind. And if you can't remember it, they might take it personal. They get so mad at you they can't get on with the story. I know you remember, not like my Aunt Fannie Mae. She would get all into a story and catch herself, but that was before you were born, and flash some stove-out teeth at you. Fannie Mae would pause and flash for emphasis, always break it down. And she'd say, I wish you could have seen it, Doris. Not me. When I get done, when I'm done, won't be no wishing you could see. You're gonna see and believe. Thank you. There were two towns, Gainesville, Georgia, and Cornelia, Georgia. And Gainesville is where my bio father lived, and Cornelia is where my bio mom lived. And so there are these two houses, two locales that I'm spiritually bound to. But my parents didn't really get along that well, so Mama left him and went huffily up the mountain 30 miles to Cornelia. And so 103 Sequoia Street partly determined who and what I am. Sequoia is a Cherokee word turned black on the hill across the railroad track in Appalachian foothills where madness like morning glories, took over everyone, trying to be insane and acceptable all at once. All at once.
Sure.
And all the time hated. 2 rows of houses along the railroad tracks. Mr. Oscar Wise, the peanut man and his family, they still there. They still there in the arid honeysuckles, haunted. Mr. Miller's wife, I know you remember her. I done told you, you remember her, I know you do. Mr. Miller's wife, that's all the name she had. She'd been dead for years. We still saw her pale face surrounded by wild colored Indian hair pressed against the window. On the regular, we saw her. At 103 Sequoia Street, in what 1 bedroom where most of us 18 people slept, a square hole in the ceiling. From that hole, one night, a man in white floated down. He ate the light bulb, floated back up. Anthony and Jeff, 20 years later in the same room, they looked up, saw that light bulb dancing up and down. They got sober real quick and split. Becky's mama, Fish, she said the man that Jimmy saw sitting over the middle of the well, the one with no head, that was Jimmy's great-granddaddy. He got his head cut off. Why they stay there, you ask? That's why they have no head. Why do they stay there? How do they live? What is there? Okay. Near no ocean, just Russell Lake, the other side of and down a steep mountain. Nothing to cause this fog except the supernatural. Nothing to cause this fog except our minds. Thick, wet, blind and fog. When fall softened the already quiet hill, leaves fell, muffled and slow, in animated fog. In that fog, they dreamed silence, dreaming each other. In that fog, one walked out at night and never told what she saw, but Miss Cleo knew the fog in the trees, in and out the leaves, with no voice, yet speaking to people whose minds meet in dreams, dreaming the same dream. Dream we was real. We shared dreams and short memories. Dreams, memories, and amnesia. At the end of school, we always went somewhere. A bus full of excited cheering in May, headed to the Indian Reservation up in North Carolina. Every time just as excited like the first time, except for a few people. Oh shoot, not them Indians again. But we were a reservation on Cherokee land, on a beautiful hill of apartheid reserved for the coloreds. And though many of us honestly had Indian blood, we had what? Short memories, dreams, and amnesia. The Cherokee could have traveled to Northeast Georgia to look at us, making not beads and moccasins, no touristy attractive stuff, just inventing each other repeatedly on Sequoia Street with names like Wolf, Drunk Dessa, Mr. Rat, Mr. Papa Doc, Mr. Pray Forevermore, Jim Smith, the Elephant Killer, Miss Zelma Crow, Miss Cleo. If someone wanted to see our ritual stomp downs, they'd have to find Fred's Tavern or Sally's Lunchroom, or another joint way back in the woods that you would need permission and a guide to get to. And once you got there, you could not leave. Ask Miss Cleo. We had, like most places and people in this country, we had at least 2 or 3 major institutions. And they were, of course, the school, the church, Shady Grove Baptist, and Miss Sally's lunchroom. Miss Sally's is always a black restaurant, back in those days anyway. It's always a black restaurant in each black community, and it served all of our needs. It was a store, it was a social gathering place, it was a business meeting place. Anyway, Sally's lunchroom. Every Sunday after morning service, they would go to Sally's like the sermon sent them. You might burn in hell for your sins, but you would go to Sally's first. You know, just like the Saturday nighters came in to hang over bacon, eggs, and grits, eyes with a smile left over from last night, as the good church folk walked self-righteously in to condemn what they'd done a few years or hours before. Young folk came to Miss Sally's, waiting to grow up and get a ride to Mount Airy to Fred's Tavern every day but Sunday. Put on your red dress, baby, 'cause we stepping out tonight. Put on your red dress, baby, we stepping out tonight. Put on some clothes. You gonna put on some clothes? I might as well. Well, I'll meet you at the top of the hill about 8 o'clock. Put on your high heel sneakers, 'cause we stepping out. One of several writers inspired me, and I worked on this book for maybe 20 years, maybe for all my life. I started writing when I was 12. Ceremony, this is the end of the book, because I have to close them up. This is full of people talking, and if I don't do this, they will keep talking. When you will be gone, I'll still be in here for Christmas. It's just a, you know, we've been in here 5 hours. Yeah, but ain't that amazing? You know? Because it's really first person poems. I wanted to write about my family, the Gibsons, and realized I didn't have the literal history, so I started dealing with what I did know. And then the other stories came from everybody. Ceremony. Sequoia is a Cherokee word for the hill, across the railroad tracks in Appalachian foothills, where madness runs like possums, like honeysuckle kudzu, taking over everyone, insane and acceptable, all the time, all the time. Sequoia sits playing tricks on minds, haunted, Sequoia. Sounds inflected in rhythmical air in a sacred place. Don't mess with the sacred. Like it got us, it will get you every time. What I learned then, although I didn't have the words for it, and I too, is another reason I wanted Bianca to be here. I too was a nerd and a geek. I never will forget one of the first beatings I got was because this little awful girl in Gainesville, Georgia said, "I bet you can't spell Florida." I'm like, "Florida? Give me something hard like Mississippi." I never could get the S's and I's. F-O, whack. No, I did spell the whole word, but she knocked it out my mouth. I was like, "Oh." It didn't occur to me to hit her back. It was like, "Oh, but it's right." If it had been wrong, I could have understood it. But I too was a geek and considered gifted and a genius, and these are the things I grew up with. I assumed that I was. Well, we knew I was good looking, the whole family was. That was you know, and I mean, there's a little girl when somebody told me one day, "Oh, you so cute." I said, "I know it." I never did understand this foolishness about false modesty. Give me a break, right? At 67 and a few other things out of place, I know I might not be what I used to be, but honey, let me tell you, our whole family looked good. I was about 100 people. We all kinds of shapes and sizes and voluptuous and thick, skinny. Didn't matter. The whole world. We had the whole world up in our family. So we had that going. So when I came out here and I hear people still talking about things like, and this is for Bill, till I said so. Need to change the language. People keep talking about white or male privilege. That's not privilege. If I come in this room and tell you all these chairs belong to me, they're mine now, and tell you you have to go outside and stand up, how is that privilege? And that's what white male supremacy has done, and male supremacy. Totally take over other people's rights and got us thinking that's privilege. Privilege is to wake up in the mountains and see the sunrise. That is privilege. You didn't take that from somebody. The universe gave that to you, right? So what is often called privilege is actually pathology. One way you can decolonize yourselves is change that terminology. Every time you say white privilege, they go, "Yeah, I'm privileged." No, you ain't, you ugly thing. That's privilege. You know. The behavior is ugly. I'm just saying, take all of the water and say, "Oh, that's colored water out there." That isn't privilege. That is pathological.
Yep.
So, another word. People use heteronormalcy. No, it's heteropathology. Not that it's pathological to be heterosexual, but the manifestations of it. That it's compulsory, that people have been judged accordingly if we are not hetero. You see? That's where it becomes pathological. That we can't go to doctors. Years ago, I couldn't go to a doctor. "Oh, are you sexually active?" I might be. What's it to you? Or what's your husband say about this? What? That's what I mean by heteropathology, right? At one point, I decided I wanted a hysterectomy. I want you to know this SOB refused to give me a hysterectomy. I've been wanting one since I was 12. I just didn't have insurance, and my mama wouldn't co-sign. But, I didn't see why I had to have those pains and that blood every month. And I knew absolutely when I was 5, I didn't want no cherry. Why? I had to write. Children take up time. So do spouses. They want kisses and hugs and food. I ain't got time. I don't mean no harm, but all due respect, Shoot. Belle talking about she looking for love. Better go find out one of the mountains. I feel plenty loved. I don't know what she's talking about. My sister told me the other day, "I wish you could have some company." I said, "What? Did I not tell you I have my mountains? If I want some people, I know what to find. I don't have time. I have to write poems." So heteropathology then has everybody, a large portion of the world, thinking that's the way it's to be, and it's not normal. Another word, minorities. I never could use that word. We are not minorities. We are a global majority. The only minority in the world is whites. If you look at the whole global world, so that's another mind fuck. And finally, people have a habit of referring to slaves. Those people weren't slaves. Slave is a noun. It's like, I'm just gonna be a slave. No, you ain't. Those people were enslaved. They were enslaved. Somebody acted on them and did that to them. Now, I mention all this only by way of saying, again, connected to the community where I grew up, we already assumed we were the norm. So to leave that community and somebody tell me I'm a minority, what? How can I be, as Dentazaki wrote years ago, how can I be marginalized when I am the center of my own existence? How can we be? Unless you're standing there letting somebody mess with your brain, right? Now, you know, economics and all that, that's huger, that's more than. And so where I come from, we were mostly all poor, right? But that somehow didn't have the kind of impact on us that people thought it should, you know? So what, we poor, we look good? What's your problem, right? What you trying to say, right? I had several uncles who lived like that. Anyway, Sequoia Street, Crystal, Northeast Georgia. The freedom there gave me a definition of beingness, of freedom, of entitlement to my mountains, if you will. I really did literally go for walks late at night in the fog. And sometimes people would look out the window and go, oh, it's just Doris, and go back to bed. I was never molested. Nobody ever even yelled at me except to just speak, because they knew that was something I just did, right? And everybody has some unique trait that she or he just did. Ed Griffin, for example, used to howl like a dog. At dances we had, Ed break it down. Ow! And he dropped down to his knees a while. And somebody said, work with it, Ed, work with it. What they say that for? He get all down on his knees. Howl a while, right? Come on, Ed. You know, we didn't think that was weird. I'm just saying, eccentricity. So, because we lived in a place surrounded by mountains, for me and quite a few of us, it was the mountains giving us permission to be as eccentric, as loving, as passionate as we chose to be. And all of that is in Sequoia Street poems. And I brought a few to sell. Now, 65 poems I wrote and published when I was 65, because then we come into something else that a lot of the world tries to tell us. Well, first you heard Carolyn and Bill talk about it, you know, and okay, Bianca too, about how everybody seems to want to be or own a black woman's body. Well, anytime you all just admitted that that's because we are that desirable, that beautiful, and that powerful, anytime you just admitted that, that seems obvious to me. Why would you expend so much trouble toward controlling something if it weren't important to you? In other words, the people trying to control us are diseased. I had to tell a white boy on Facebook the other day. I guess he stopped talking to me. But that is a disease. The freer a person is, the more that person can leave others alone. It does not necessitate going out stomping somebody, defiling them, defaming them. So what I'm saying is, if you are a person to whom that has happened, consider and remember that the person who's doing that to you is ill. Now that doesn't make it hurt any less, but you sure won't be standing there saying, well, why you hit me in the head with that stick? No, you get out the way, right? Tell them to hit themselves in the head. You feeling like that, right? 65 poems. The introduction. This is about space and place. Design of space and place. I have read poems, had people walk out on them. They didn't like what I was saying because it flipped the script. Nobody's going to tell me I'm sick for no reason or deficient. And neither should any of us allow that to happen. So my poems just make the script. Still alive at the end, part one of it. Still alive at the end, and I'm performing this on YouTube if you ever want to see how I hooked it up, right? You know, like in those movies where the black person is dead in the first 5 minutes. I know you've seen the movies, right? Most of them, right? So like in those movies, and if we ain't dead in the first 5 minutes, we ain't gonna make it to the end. We know that. So we watching the movie wondering, oh, there go a black person. She taking bets now. She gonna make it to the end. What you think? I don't know. What she wearing, right? Who she hooked up with? Bet she won't make it to the end. Still alive at the end. That is a concern even in life. So this book is like that. Here it is. It's that beginning, but this is a new end. One of my Roots daughters, I belong to the organization Alternate Roots. which is allegedly about activism and community, right, Laverne, right, Alice? And it just celebrated its 40th year of existence. And most of us artists who belong to that organization also are active, social justice workers, cultural workers, movers and shakers, big liars, whatever, something to change the world. And we meet once a year, and I have a whole group of young people, young women, that I refer to as my daughters now. And I will also include Bianca in that list. What to tell our female children, dedicated to my Roots daughters. This was written for Marissa Alexander, you know who she is, and Octavia Butler. Marissa Alexander is the black woman who a couple of years ago, I think this was 2013 or 14, it's a black woman who had been abused by her husband, and the last time he charged at her, she shot in the arrow, a warning shot. She didn't even try to hit him. But she was given 20 years for that in Florida by a white supremacist bitch judge in Florida. That was as of March 2014. Since then, I think she's been exonerated, maybe not of all charges, but she's no longer in jail. But at that point, Marissa was in jail. So this is for Marissa Alexander and Octavia Butler. You know who Octavia is. Visionary sci-fi writer, June 22nd, 1947 to February 24th, 2006. And I met Octavia in Los Angeles when I lived there, long before the entire world decided, oh, Octavia, oh yeah, you ain't know that code. You know my Octavia, right? Anyway, I know her that well, but my lover and I at that time, as soon as we went to see Octavia. And this is for the visionary aspect of Octavia, and I still claim one of her most visionary novels is Mind of My Mind. Well, people keep wanting to read the easily accessible slavery novel. Oh, what is that called? There you go, see, you know that one. Mind of My Mind, Wild Seed, particularly do Wild Seed. Oh my goodness. Doro is this entity which has no body, and Doro keeps taking over people's bodies and moving through time and space. And Doro's maybe 1,000 years old. And one of the bodies he created, because he creates people in these, that's speculative, Laverne, in these bodies, is a woman whose American name is Emma. And Emma is African, but she is timeless and ageless too. What she does is she keeps aging herself, that she can do that, to make the villagers think she's her own self's daughter, or whatever. And that's Wild Seed, and Mind of My Mind is in that same group. And I mentioned this because, as Bianca said, the Spirit told me to. People, look for the visionary. Look for the visionary. This is for Marissa Alexander and Octavia Butler. What to tell our female children. This is written particularly for my Roots daughters. Number one, what to tell our female children. Tell them, you are a vital, natural part of universal energy. You have a divine right to be here and anywhere else. You are loved, cherished, admired, and respected. You have a capital R right to be safe, serene, and to know joy, star, and peace, and prosperity, and health, Crystal, and well-being. We have a right to be. Tell this in multi-languaged tongues of fire, air, earth, water. First, two, then tell them monsters do exist, aberrated entities, unsubs of several species will try to drain, devour, possess, and destroy you because they got issues. Don't get it confused. It's not you, my daughters. It's them with the issues. Don't ever let nobody tell you you are the problem. They got issues. They got issues. They got problems, but they are not your problem. They are not your fault nor your responsibility. You have a right to be. Although they are good at camouflage and stealth, you can triumph. You will. 3, practice eternal joy. Practice joy-filled vigilance and dance through valleys, roads, boardrooms, congress rooms, schools, presidential debates, illiberal gatherings, courtrooms, y'all didn't even hear that, did you? Bedrooms, cyberspace. Dance through cyberspace, aware and prepared. Who are you and why are you taping this?
Izzy Broomfield. I'm taping it because I think it's really important.
But are you taping it for Crystal?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, why did you say that? Okay. Okay. Because it's all about, image and who owns it and who's doing it. So if you're doing it for her, that's a different thing. 4, you have the right to respect. You do too. Tell them not to call you girl. Okay? Tell them not to touch your hair or any part of your anatomy unless granted permission. Tell them not to call you shawty or a similar appellation. That ain't cute. Remind them all, we have a right to our own personal space, that we are blessed, armed by the universe. We are armed by the universe. If you could just be still and know that, and get all that other fussiness out your brain. We are blessed, armed by the universe. That, remember back yonder I said this is for Marissa Alexander. That first shot was a warning. The next shot won't be. Well, how you doing? You got any questions, comments, criticisms? Earlier too, Bill and Carolyn were talking about, Bill was talking about how certain women are not heard in academia. So for telling the truth, I have been totally outsided. Because a lot of times it seems often people just don't like to hear from a black woman in a healthy way. I'm simply talking about joy and exuberance and a natural approach to it. And I suggest everybody can get it. It's not just about black women, but you will not stop me from having mine, is what I'm saying. So, as the music stopped, that's my timer. I'm done, unless you have a comment or a question. Yes.
Well, my comment, Doris, is that it's interesting to hear your stories and your life, which I'm not used to. I'm more used to hearing you in a much more confrontational tone. At many of the roots gatherings.
Yeah.
So it's a nice balance to be able to see this other side of you.
Okay. Did you hear a poem you liked?
Oh, yes, I like the one, I don't know by name, but particularly the ones of the growing up and the town that you lived in and the way the family was. I just think those are really, they reveal so much to me, sometimes more than just a lot of ideas. Not that you do this, but I mean people in general, when there's a lot of ideas and opinions and on the table, they don't stick with me in the same way as the stories do.
Thank you for that. Any other question, comment? Right, yes?
I just love your positivity.
Thank you.
It's amazing. How are you feeling? What are you thinking when you're performing, or do you think of it as performing?
I do. It is very much so performing. I think of many things. I honestly think of myself as a performance poet. I've done that long before a lot of, before spoken word, before any of that. But I like to stay in touch with the book because I love books. I have performed sequestry poems totally off book, with the director and all of that, and that was fun. But I like the book. So one thing I'm thinking about is, that poem doesn't work anymore with the one I just read. Sometimes it's like, What happened to that sticker, okay? It's like, I'm gonna make this work, this will work. One of the things I seriously am always thinking about is the audience. I try to keep the audience with me. I try to engage the audience. I am almost never simply reading or performing just to hear myself. I'd rather look out and see somebody just totally got disgust on her face. I hear face, who she thinks she is. I'd rather see that than have somebody just disengaged, just sit there, you know, tuning out or whatever. So it's important to me that I reach the audience one way or the other. So sometimes I'm thinking about, and always the time, I like to be in time and on time. Crystal told me what to do, I try to do it. Yes, ma'am.
I just really appreciate your redefinitions.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that language is critical and that it puts us into boxes, and the wrong boxes many times. So
It does.
I like that. White pathology, I'm going to really, it's true. It's true.
Thank you. What's your
And
name?
Barbara Wade.
Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. Thank you for hearing it. So some people hear it and simply get offended because even no, not you. A lot of people
I'm
who,
sure you're right.
not just you, Jean, right?
Chris,
I'm so
sorry to
sorry,
interrupt
Chris,
you.
my buddy, Chris. You can interrupt me, that's fine. But what I mean is sometimes the oppressed people have more vested interest in the oppressive language because that tells them who and what they are. So if I remove that and say, wait a minute, if you use a different language, you can almost free up yourself 50%. What time is it now? 3? By dark, you could be free, 50% free, all right? I mean, it's a matter of language. Then, not those perceived as dominant, but those who are perceived as victims. It's like, oh no, they want, no, what you mean? What you mean? You know, whites ain't the problem. I said, I didn't say the word the problem. I said, you are sometimes your own problem, right? You just redefine reality. And do the mountains care what name I give them? They still will be standing there, majestic and beautiful, unless somebody stripped mine or something like that. Thank you for that feedback. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Generally when I see, like, if I see slam poetry or poetry readings, you can pretty much tell when the poem's gonna start and end, and then the person kind of goes back to their regular voice. And what I thought was really interesting and inspiring is that your entire presentation was very seamless, and when you were talking about the background of the poem and talking about your experiences and your thoughts, and then actually telling the poem, I just really enjoyed how it was very seamless. I've never seen anything performed in that way, and I thought it was almost like your whole presentation was like a poem, you know? So I really enjoyed that.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you for that. That's one thing I think about too sometimes. Not maybe right now, but you know, sometimes. Again, I would like to just give thanks to Crystal and to everybody on this program and to all of you for coming, because I haven't done a reading in a long time. And as Bianca was saying, I really needed this. I needed every one of you, and I'm grateful for every one of you. And you look like Sherry Stowe.
Me?
You. Sherry Stowe was a student of mine in New Haven, Connecticut, and she had the same heart-shaped face and the same look of intensity on her face. That can't be Sherry. But the thing about the seamlessness is what would happen with our people on the hills where I live. Everything was like that. You know, somebody's going down the hill, because you have to walk down the hill, and you say somebody, you know, so how you doing today, Miss Durr? Well, I'm going to be all right, you know, because last night John said he was coming over with some something for me. He ain't got there yet. But, you know, I guess I'll be all right. Seamless. Seamless. Lord have mercy. And we sitting on the porch, we little children going, dang, there go Miss Dora. And I'm doing this because we called it palsy. And she always had a pocketbook in that arm. And so she had to be in her 80s, it seemed like. But she had boyfriends and stuff. She'd be seamlessly strutting down the hill, all dressed up, with her arms shaking. You know, you be in trouble ask Miss Dora how she doing. You better have some time. But thank you. It's all about that community. And anything else? Comment, question, observation?
Thank you.